The letter arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, wedged between a pizza flyer and an overdue electric bill. I almost missed it, a yellowed envelope with my mother's unmistakable handwriting. My hands trembled as I read the return address. Margaret Lawson, 1992. My name is Emery, and until that moment, I thought I knew everything about how my parents died. I stood in my kitchen, coffee forgotten on the counter, staring at this ghost from 30 years ago. The seal was intact, the paper aged but pristine, as if it had been waiting all these years to find me. How had it surfaced now? Where had it been? This can't be real, I whispered, running my finger along the edge of the envelope. My mother died when I was 5, along with my father, in what everyone called a tragic accident. A car crash on a rainy night, at least, that's what Uncle Gideon had always told me. The phone rang, making me jump. Lydia's name flashed on the screen.
Ing?
Are you coming to book club tonight? Sarah's making those amazing lemon bars again. My voice caught. Something came up. A letter from my mom. Silence crackled over the line. Your mom? But that's impossible. It's dated 1992, 3 months before they died. I finally worked up the courage to open it, the paper crackling beneath my fingers. Lydia, I need to read this. I'll call you back. I hung up before she could respond and unfolded the letter with shaking hands. The words blurred before my eyes, then snapped into focus. My dearest Emery, if you're reading this, something has happened to your father and me. Robert discovered something at work, something dangerous. He's been gathering evidence, but Uncle Gideon knows. We're planning to leave town tonight, but if we don't make it, the truth is in the library. Look for the book your father always read to you. You'll know which one. Be careful who you trust. Even family can betray you. All my love.
Mom.
The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor. My quiet life as a small-town librarian suddenly felt like a facade, hiding something darker underneath. The accident that killed my parents, was it really an accident? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Uncle Gideon. Emery, I just heard the most curious thing from Jasper. Something's about a letter. My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone except Lydia, and that was barely 5 minutes ago. How did Jasper know? I don't know what you're talking about, I lied, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I'm actually heading to work. Ah, yes, the library. Following in your father's footsteps, aren't you? His laugh felt hollow. Why don't you come by the house this weekend? Cora's been asking about you. I'll think about it, I said, already knowing I would go, not for the invitation but for answers. Wonderful. Oh, and Emery? Be careful with old papers. They have a way of falling apart when handled
Carelessly.
The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, then at the letter in my hand. The threat in his words was clear as day. My mother's warning echoed in my mind. Be careful who you trust. Even family can betray you. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my pocket. The book my father always read to me, The Secret Garden. Of course. He read it so many times I could recite entire passages from memory. Tomorrow, I would start searching the library's archives. But tonight, I needed to make copies of this letter and hide them somewhere safe. Because one thing was crystal clear. Uncle Gideon knew something about my parents' death, and he didn't want me digging into the past. Too bad for him. I've spent my whole life around books, and if there's one thing I know how to do, it's research. Whatever truth my father discovered, whatever secret cost my parents their lives, I'm going to find it. And God help anyone who tries to stop me. Uncle Gideon's estate looked exactly as I remembered, a sprawling Victorian mansion that seemed to judge everyone who approached it. I sat in my car, watching shadows move behind the curtained windows, my mother's letter burning a hole in my jacket pocket. The front door opened before I could knock. Aunt Cora stood there, perfectly coiffed as always, but something about her smile seemed strained. Emery, darling, what a lovely surprise. She pulled me into a hug that lasted a beat too long. As she drew back, she whispered, Be careful what you say. The walls have ears. Before I could process that warning, Jasper appeared in the hallway. My cousin looked more like his father every year, same sharp features, same calculating eyes. Well, if it isn't our favorite librarian, finally decided to grace us with your presence. Jasper, I nodded, keeping my voice neutral. How's the family business? Thriving. Unlike some career choices I could mention. He smirked, then turned toward his father's study. Dad's waiting for you. I followed him down the familiar hallway, noting how the family photos on the walls still excluded my parents. It was as if they'd been erased from the family history, except for one small picture I'd never noticed before. My father, standing with Uncle Gideon outside what looked like an office building, both smiling. But my father's smile didn't reach his eyes. Uncle Gideon sat behind his massive desk, reading glasses perched on his nose. He didn't look up when I entered. Sit down, Emery. Jasper, give us a moment. Jasper hesitated, then left, closing the door with unnecessary force. So, Uncle Gideon said, finally meeting my eyes. Let's discuss this letter of yours. I never said I had a letter. He laughed, but it wasn't a warm sound. Come now, we both know better. Your mother was always protective, always worried about things she didn't understand. Like what got her killed? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His expression hardened. Careful, Emery. Some questions are better left unasked. Your parents made choices that put them on a dangerous path. I tried to warn them. Warn them about what? He opened a drawer and pulled out a familiar book, The Secret Garden. My breath caught. Looking for this? Jasper found it in the library archives yesterday. Interesting notes your father left in the margins. My hands clenched into fists. That belongs to me. Does it? Everything in that library belongs to the Price Family Foundation. Your father was merely an employee. He tapped the book's cover, though he did leave some fascinating breadcrumbs. Tell me, what exactly are you hoping to find? The truth. The truth? He stood, walking to the window. The truth is that your father was a good man who got involved in things beyond his understanding. The truth is that your mother enabled his paranoia instead of helping him see reason. The truth, dear niece, is that sometimes accidents happen for a reason. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. I stood up, hands shaking. Are you admitting something, Uncle Gideon? He turned, his expression suddenly gentle. I'm trying to protect you, just as I've always done. Drop this investigation. Focus on your quiet life. Some doors are better left closed. A knock interrupted us. Aunt Cora entered with a tea tray, her hands trembling slightly. I thought you both might need refreshments. As she set down the tray, she knocked over a cup. Tea spilled across some papers on Gideon's desk, and in the chaos of cleaning up, she pressed something into my hand, a small key. Clumsy me, she said, but her eyes met mine meaningfully. Emery, dear, would you help me in the kitchen? She was just leaving, Gideon said firmly. I clutched the key in my pocket, mind racing. Actually, I could use some tea. My nerves are shot after our enlightening conversation. Gideon's jaw tightened, but he couldn't object without seeming suspicious. As I followed Aunt Cora out, I heard him on the phone. Yes, she's here. No, she's not backing down. We may need to accelerate our timeline. In the kitchen, Cora gripped my arm. Your father's old office. Tonight. But be careful, Jasper's been watching the building. Why are you helping me? She glanced toward the study, lowering her voice. Because some accidents aren't accidents at all. And some secrets are worth dying for. I left the house with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. Whatever my father had discovered, it was big enough to kill for. And someone in my family had already proven they were willing to do just that. The key Aunt Cora gave me felt impossibly heavy in my hand as I stood outside my father's old office building at midnight. The street was empty, but my skin prickled with the sensation of being watched. I'd parked 3 blocks away, taking a circuitous route to avoid any tail Jasper might have set up. My phone buzzed Lydia again. Her 5th call today. I silenced it, remembering her strange behavior at the library earlier. You need to stop digging, she'd said, grabbing my arm as I was researching old company records. Some people, they're worried about what you might find. Some people? Or Uncle Gideon? She looked away then, her face pale. Just trust me, Em. Please. But I couldn't stop now. Not after finding my father's notes in the secret garden, fragments about offshore accounts, missing funds, and something called Project Phoenix. The lock clicked open smoothly, despite years of disuse. Inside, dust covered everything except, strangely, the desk. Someone had been here recently. I pulled out my flashlight, sweeping it across the room. Family photos still hung on the walls. Mom and Dad at their wedding, me on my 5th birthday, Uncle Gideon and Dad breaking ground on some new project. But there, behind the desk, something caught my eye. A section of wallpaper that didn't quite match. My hands trembled as I peeled it back, revealing a small wall safe. The key Cora gave me fit perfectly. Inside was a single leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age. My father's handwriting filled every page, growing increasingly frantic toward the end. Gideon's cooking the books.
Milio missing.
But it's worse than that. The development projects, they're not just real estate deals. Someone's paying to hide something. G says I'm paranoid, but I've seen the shipping manifests. God help me. What have I gotten involved in? The floor creaked behind me. I was wondering when you'd find it. Lydia's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, looking both guilty and determined. I'm sorry, Em. I really am. How long have you been working for them? Since college. Your uncle. He paid for my mother's cancer treatment. I owed him. She stepped closer. But I never wanted this. I never wanted anyone to die. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Your parents, it wasn't supposed to happen that way. Gideon just wanted the evidence gone. But Jasper. She swallowed hard. He took things into his own hands. The journal felt like it was burning through my fingers. Jasper killed my parents? He tampered with their brakes. Said it had to look like an accident. Tears streamed down her face. I've been carrying this secret for so long. When you started investigating, Gideon ordered me to stop you. But I can't. I can't keep lying. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Lydia's eyes widened in panic. He followed me. You need to go.
Now.
I shoved the journal into my bag, but before I could move, Jasper appeared in the doorway. His face was eerily calm. Hello, cousin. Finding anything interesting? Stay back, I warned, backing toward the window. He laughed, low and dangerous. You know, I always resented how Uncle Robert treated you like his precious little princess, while treating me like an outsider. Even though I was the one who understood what this family needed. What this family needed was the truth. I spat. The truth. He stepped closer. The truth is that your father was weak. He would have destroyed everything my father built. I did what needed to be done. By killing my parents? By protecting our legacy. He lunged forward, but Lydia grabbed his arm. Run, she screamed. I didn't hesitate. I crashed through the fire escape door, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Behind me, I heard a struggle, then Lydia's scream cut short. My car was too far. I ran instead toward the main street, the journal clutched to my chest, my father's last words echoing in my mind. Now I knew the truth, or at least part of it. But that truth had already cost 3 lives. As I disappeared into the night, one thought burned in my mind. Jasper might have killed my parents, but Uncle Gideon had given him the motive. And I finally had proof of both their crimes. The question was, would I live long enough to use it? I hadn't slept in 36 hours. My father's journal lay open on my kitchen table, its revelations keeping me awake along with endless cups of coffee. The morning news droned in the background until a familiar name caught my attention. Local businesswoman Lydia Monroe was found unconscious outside her office building early this morning. Police suspect. I knocked over my coffee, reaching for the remote. Lydia's photo filled the screen, her professional headshot smiling back at me while the anchor described her suspicious fall. My hands shook as I dialed the hospital. I'm sorry, but Miss Monroe isn't accepting visitors, the nurse said. Please, I'm family. I lied, desperation creeping into my voice. Her family's already here. Her mother and Mr. Price have been with her since admission. My blood ran cold. Uncle Gideon was there already. Of course he was. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Storage Unit 247. Riverside Complex. Code 1992. Come alone. See. Aunt Cora. But could I trust her? After Lydia's accident, every shadow looked like a threat. The storage facility was deserted when I arrived. Unit 247 stood at the end of a long row, security camera conspicuously dark above it. I punched in the code, my birth year, I realized, and the door rolled up with a grinding sound. Inside, stacked boxes filled most of the space, each one labeled with project names I recognized from Dad's journal. But it was the wall of photographs that made my heart stop. Surveillance photos.
Dozens of them.
My parents outside their house. Dad at his office. Mom at the grocery store. Me at the library, taken just last week. Years of surveillance, meticulously documented. Shocking, isn't it? I spun around. Jasper stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. How long have you been following me? Following you? Oh, cousin, you really don't understand. He stepped inside, glancing at the photos. This was never about you. This was about legacy. About who deserves to carry the price named forward. By murdering my parents? By protecting the family business. Your father was going to expose everything, the money laundering, the offshore accounts, all of it. Dad couldn't see it, but I knew what had to be done. And Lydia? His face hardened. She made her choice. Just like you're making yours. I backed away, bumping into the boxes. You won't get away with this. I have the journal, the evidence. You have nothing. He slammed his hand against the wall. That journal? Those photos? They're copies. The originals are safe. Insurance, you might say, against people who think they can destroy what we've built. A shadow moved behind him. Aunt Cora appeared, holding something metallic. That's enough, Jasper. He laughed. Really, Mom? The concerned Anne act? Tell her the truth. Tell her who took those photos. My world tilted. Aunt Cora? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I did what I had to do. To protect my son. My family. Your family? The betrayal felt like physical pain. You watched them die. You helped cover it up. I made a choice, she whispered. Just like you need to make one now. Walk away, Emery.
Please.
Before anyone else gets hurt. I looked between them, aunt and cousin, mother and son, and saw the truth. There was no justice to be found here. Only survival. The journal goes public tomorrow, I said, forcing steel into my voice. Everything. The surveillance, the money, the murders. Unless. Unless what? Jasper sneered. Unless you confess. Both of you. Clear my parents' names. Let the truth come out. Or what? You'll destroy the family? I thought of Lydia in her hospital bed, of my parents' crashed car, of years of lies and manipulation. The family's already destroyed. I'm just deciding who goes down with it. The security light flickered outside, casting strange shadows across Jasper's face. For a moment, he looked terrifyingly like Uncle Gideon. You know, he said softly, you really are your father's daughter. He reached into his jacket, and I realized too late what that meant. The last thing I saw was Aunt Cora turning away as Jasper raised his arm. Some choices, it seems, run in the family. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors and Uncle Gideon sitting beside my bed. My head throbbed where Jasper had struck me, but that pain was nothing compared to the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. You're lucky the security guard found you, Gideon said quietly. Though I suspect luck had nothing to do with it. My throat felt like sandpaper. Where's Jasper?
Gone.
Along with Cora. He handed me a glass of water, his hands trembling slightly. They emptied the storage unit before police arrived. Quite thorough, actually. Just like they were 27 years ago. I studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. You knew? About my parents. I suspected. But suspicion without proof. He trailed off, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Your father came to me the night before he died. Said he had evidence of something terrible. I told him to wait, to let me handle it internally. The next morning, They were dead. He nodded, pulling something from his jacket, a flash drive. This was in your father's desk. The original copies of everything. I've kept it all these years, waiting. For what? For someone brave enough to finish what Robert started. He placed the drive on my bedside table. Or foolish enough. The door opened and a nurse entered, followed by Detective Sarah Chin. I recognized her from the local news. Miss Lawson, she said, notebook ready. Feel up to answering some questions about your attack.
Gideon stood.
My niece needs rest. Your niece needs justice, Chin countered. Just like Lydia Monroe. Interesting timing, don't you think? 2 attacks, both connected to your family business. I caught Gideon's subtle flinch at Lydia's name. Something clicked. How is Lydia? I asked. Stable, Chin replied. She's been asking for you. Says she has something important to tell you about Project Phoenix. Gideon's face went pale. I should call my lawyer. You should, Chin agreed. We found some interesting documents in Miss Monroe's possession. Something about offshore accounts. My uncle's composure cracked. Emery, whatever you're thinking of doing. You knew. I cut him off. All these years, you knew what they did to my parents. You protected them. I protected you. He stepped closer, voice dropping. If I hadn't taken you in, given you a normal life, you have ended up like them. Dead in a ditch somewhere. Or maybe I'd have grown up knowing the truth. That my cousin murdered my parents while my aunt took pictures, and my uncle covered it all up. Chen's pen stopped moving. Is that a statement, Miss Lawson? The flash drive felt heavy in my hand. One piece of evidence that could destroy everything, my family, my life, any chance of peace. Actually, I said, meeting Gideon's desperate gaze. It's a confession. But not just mine. I turned to Chin. I'd like to make a deal. I have evidence of decades of corporate fraud, murder, and conspiracy. But I want immunity for one person.
Who?
Lydia Monroe. She tried to warn me, try to stop this. She deserves a chance to make things right. Chin nodded slowly. And your family? I thought of Jasper's sneer, Cora's betrayal, Gideon's lies. Family. What a poisonous word that had become. They made their choices, I said, gripping the flash drive tighter. Now I'm making mine. Gideon moved toward the door, but Chen's partners were already there, blocking his exit. You'll regret this, he warned. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. Like my parents? My voice cracked. No more secrets, Uncle Gideon. No more lies. It's time everyone knew exactly what kind of family the Prices really are. As they led him away, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear in my uncle's eyes. Not for himself, but for what was coming. Because he knew, just as I did, that this was only the beginning. The truth about Project Phoenix was still out there, waiting to burn everything down. And this time, I'd make sure no one escaped the flames. The police interview room felt colder than my hospital room. Detective Chin spread photos across the table, surveillance shots from the storage unit, crime scene photos from my parents' accident, and new images of Jasper and Cora boarding a private plane.
They're gone, Chin said.
Left the country this morning. But that's not our biggest problem. She slid another photo forward. Uncle Gideon, slumped over in his holding cell. He had a cyanide capsule. Old school but effective. The note he left. She hesitated. It was addressed to you. My hands shook as I unfolded the paper. Emery, Project Phoenix was your father's idea. Ask Lydia about the children. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the truth.
Gee.
The children? My head spun. I need to see Lydia. She's missing. Chen's words hit like physical blows. Disappeared from her hospital room an hour ago. Security cameras show her leaving voluntarily. That's impossible. She could barely walk. Unless she was never really injured. Chun leaned forward. We found this in her apartment. She pushed forward a photograph I'd seen before. My parents with Uncle Gideon outside an office building. But now I noticed something in the background. A young Lydia, holding her mother's hand. Her mother didn't have cancer, Chin continued. She worked for your father's research division. Project Phoenix wasn't about money laundering. It was about genetic experimentation. On children. The room tilted. I remembered Lydia's words at the storage unit. Some choices run in the family. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Library basement. Midnight. Come alone if you want to understand why they had to die. It's a trap, Chin warned. Of course it is. I stood up. But it's also my only chance to end this. I'll send backup.
No.
Lydia will see them coming. She's been playing us all along. I touched the scar on my head where Jasper had struck me. Besides, I'm done hiding from my family's sins. Chun grabbed my arm. This isn't just about your family anymore. We found records, dozens of children, experiments spanning decades. Your parents weren't trying to expose it. They were trying to perfect it. The truth felt like acid in my veins. Everything I thought I knew about my parents, about myself, crumbled. Then why kill them? Because they wanted to stop. Your mother's letter, the one that started all this? It wasn't a warning. It was a confession. I left the station in a daze, the pieces finally falling into place. Lydia wasn't just my friend. She was one of the children. A successful experiment. And now she was finishing what my parents had started. The library stood dark against the night sky. My sanctuary, now a monument to decades of horror. As I approached the basement door, my phone buzzed one last time. Like mother, like daughter. Some experiments run in the family. Check your blood work from the hospital. My hands trembled as I pulled up my medical records. There it was, buried in the DNA analysis. Genetic markers identical to those in Project Phoenix's research files. I wasn't just investigating my family's crimes. I was living proof of them. The basement door creaked open. Lydia stood in the shadows, looking nothing like the injured woman from the hospital.
Hello, sister, she said.
Ready to embrace your inheritance? Behind her, I glimpsed rows of medical equipment, computers, and something that looked disturbingly like holding cells. The Price family legacy, she continued, isn't about money or power. It's about evolution. Your parents understood that. And deep down, so do you. She held out her hand, offering a choice. Walk away and live with the truth, or step forward and become part of it. In that moment, I understood why my mother wrote that letter. Not to expose the truth, but to warn me about what I might become. The basement door closed behind me with a final, heavy click. Some choices, it seems, were made for us long before we were born. The library basement hummed with the sound of ancient machinery. Lydia led me past rows of medical equipment, each station marked with familiar names, children I'd grown up with in our small town. They're all like us, Lydia said, her voice eerily calm. Experiments. Successes. The ones who survived anyway. A door slammed behind us. Jasper stepped out of the shadows, looking nothing like the cousin I remembered. His movements were too fluid, too precise. Welcome home, little sister, he sneered. Or should I say, Subject 23? This ends tonight, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Detective Chun has everything. The files, the evidence. You mean these files? Another figure emerged, Aunt Cora, holding a familiar flash drive. Poor Gideon. Always keeping insurance, never realizing I had my own copies. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. You were the one running Project Phoenix all along. Someone had to continue their work, Cora said, moving to a computer terminal. Your parents were brilliant but weak. They wanted to stop when they saw what they'd created. But you can't stop evolution. Screens flickered to life around us, showing surveillance footage of children, training, fighting, changing. I recognized myself in some videos, too young to remember. Why show me this now? Because it's time to choose, Lydia said. Your parents' death wasn't just about silencing them. It was about triggering your transformation. Trauma activates the genetic modifications.
Just like it did for me.
For all of us. My head throbbed as memories surfaced. Childhood accidents, convenient injuries, carefully orchestrated losses. They'd been conditioning me my entire life. I won't help you continue this. You already are. Jasper pressed a button, and more screens lit up. Live feeds of the town. Every book you've handled in that library, Every child you've read to, we've been collecting DNA samples, continuing the research. You're the perfect carrier. Horror rose in my throat. Those children will become the next generation, Cora finished. Better, stronger, thanks to you.
No.
I backed away, but Jasper moved with inhuman speed, blocking my escape. You can't fight genetics, cousin. I felt it when I hit you at the storage unit, your abilities activating. Just like they did for me when I killed your parents. Something snapped inside me. The rage I'd been suppressing exploded outward. Jasper flew across the room, crashing into equipment. I hadn't touched him. That's it, Lydia whispered. Accept what you are. But in that moment of clarity, I saw what my parents must have seen, the monster their research had created, the legacy they died trying to stop. I reached for the main power terminal, letting the energy build inside me. You forgot something about evolution. What's that? Cora demanded, reaching for an alarm. Sometimes species go extinct. I released everything, all the rage, pain, and power they'd built into me. Electricity arced through the room, destroying 30 years of research in seconds. Jasper lunged, but this time I was ready. We crashed together with superhuman force, years of hidden abilities finally unleashed. This is for my parents, I growled, feeling bones crack beneath my hands. Lydia screamed as servers exploded around us. Cora ran for the emergency exit, but Detective Chen was already there, backed by a tactical team. It's over, I said, watching my childhood friend collapse amid the ruins of our shared nightmare. We're not continuing the cycle. You can't erase what you are, Lydia gasped as officers surrounded her. No, I agreed, feeling the power pulse through my veins. But I can choose what I become. Outside, dawn broke over the library. Chun approached with a tablet. Security cameras caught everything. The world will know the truth now. I watched hazmat teams enter the basement, thinking of all the children who'd never know what was done to them, what they might become. Not everything, I said, feeling the last traces of Project Phoenix burn away. Some secrets should stay buried. I turned toward the sunrise, leaving my family's legacy in ashes behind me. Sometimes the only way to honor your parents' memory is to finish what they started, even if that means destroying everything they built. Some choices, after all, are worth burning for. 6 months after the library basement showdown, I stood in front of the renovated Price estate. The sign read Lawson Memorial Library and Community Center, my parents' names finally restored to their rightful place. Detective Chen approached, holding a familiar-looking envelope. Found this in Cora's safety deposit box. It's addressed to you, dated the day before your parents died. My father's handwriting. My hands trembled as I read. Dearest Emery, if you're reading this, we succeeded in destroying our research. Project Phoenix was our greatest mistake, but you were our greatest achievement. Not because of the experiments, but because you taught us the difference between advancing humanity and preserving our humanity. The power in your blood isn't a curse or a gift. It's a choice. Choose wisely. Love, Dad. The official investigation is closing, Chen said. Jasper's in custody, Cora's cooperating, and Lydia. She hesitated. Still no sign of her? Chun shook her head. The other affected children have been notified. Most chose to never know the details. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. Inside the library, children played in the reading nook where I'd once hidden from my own truth. A young girl looked up from the secret garden, her eyes briefly flashing with a familiar intensity that made my heart skip. You can't save everyone, Chen said softly. No, I agreed. But I can give them a safe place to discover who they are. I touched the wall where we'd installed a memorial plaque. Beneath my parents' names was their favorite quote, "Knowledge is power, but wisdom is knowing when not to use it." The contractor approached with final paperwork. Just need your signature, Miss Lawson. Though there is one odd thing, the basement plans don't match any records we can find. The basement's been sealed, I said firmly. Some books shouldn't be opened. That evening, I sat in my father's old office, now my private reading room. A hidden panel in his desk had revealed one final surprise: a journal documenting every child in Project Phoenix, including genetic markers to watch for. I could continue monitoring them, protecting them from what they might become. Or I could let the past stay buried, giving them the normal life my parents wanted for me. The choice weighed heavy as I felt the familiar surge of power in my veins. Outside, a shadow moved too quickly across the lawn, Lydia, watching from a distance. Our eyes met through the window. She nodded once, a gesture of respect or warning, before disappearing into the night. I opened my father's journal one last time, then placed it in the fireplace. As the pages curled and blackened, I thought about choices, the ones our parents make for us, and the ones we make for ourselves. The library would be my legacy now. Not a place of secrets and experiments, but of knowledge freely given and wisdom carefully earned. The children of Project Phoenix would write their own stories here, unbound by the sins of their creators. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Some phoenixes rise. Others learn to stop burning. Choose wisely, sister. I deleted the message without responding. Tomorrow, children would fill these halls, some carrying secrets in their blood they'd never know about. And I would be their librarian, their protector, their living reminder that every story deserves a chance to be rewritten. The power thrummed beneath my skin, not demanding to be used, but waiting to be understood. Like the books surrounding me, it was neither good nor evil, just a tool, waiting for its reader to decide its purpose. I locked up for the night, leaving the past sealed in the basement below and the future wide open above. Sometimes the truest revenge isn't in destroying your enemies, but in building something beautiful from the ashes they left behind. And sometimes, the most powerful choice is knowing which stories to leave untold. The end. Or perhaps just another beginning.